Thank you so much for joining me on this effort. Developer experience, is a key enabler of efficiency and, really critical these days where, we continue to be asked for, higher throughput, more deliverables, fewer errors, more scale to the organization. And so investing in an engineering platform, team and function seems, highly critical. But how do we justify that in this kind of current environment and with the current setup and backdrop that we are having? And so today we try to illuminate a little bit on that topic. And maybe before we get started with my panel, maybe a show of hands from the audience on how many of you guys have a dedicated platform engineering team today. All right, not too many, so that should be good. Anyway, Shailesh, could you maybe kick us off quickly on defining a little bit how we should think about platform engineering as a topic or a subject?
So if you think of platform engineering, if you look at the overall industry, there are many companies in different aspects of the industry. You have companies focusing on the infrastructure, companies focusing on data platforms, companies, application-based companies, B2B, B2C. And if you think of platform has a much wider sense in terms of you need to think of technology stack. So when I think of platform is more starts from, and irrespective of, you have to tune the platform organization depending on which companies and what your customer's focus is. But in my mind, the platform starts from your front-end code. So you got to have a front-end platform, which is enabling your front-end teams to go faster and build those patterns and components. You have your back-end platform, which is a lot of components and services, reusable services. And then you have an infrastructure platform, which is all about your infrastructure and how CI/CD and things get deployed. So, and then there are teams which are focused also on data, and they also have a data platform unit. So that's where you got to think of platform as more than just infrastructure. I've seen a lot of companies very focus their platform just on infrastructure, and many times forget about the front-end platform or the data platform pieces. And those are the ones that gives you, especially in this day and age, it gives you that velocity that you can unlock a lot of potential from the existing developers that you have. So I think of platform much broadly, all the way from front-end, back-end, infra, and data, and that's how I would encourage everyone to think about it.
Awesome. Nora talked a little bit about sort of cognitive overload, and something that we keep on asking our developers to do is just do more with less. And Prince, maybe how do you think about sort of like platform engineers kind of stepping in and offloading some of that cognitive challenges? Also given the pace of technology shifts, the ask to be deployed in multiple cloud environments and so on.
Anders, it's a great question. Thank you for having me here. My picture looks better than I do, but that. I think one of the challenges that we have in this world is platforms. Platforms are fundamental to the way we scale, fundamental to the way we deliver, but they are not monetized very often, rarely as a matter of fact. So every head of engineering, often head of products, they have to go and they're challenged to why are we spending so much on what you call platform? Because platform, like Shailesh said, it is a lot of many things, but it is hard to point out to the one thing that it is completely, right? Because people tend to define platform differently. Some people put all infra in there, some people put DevOps in there, some people put shared services in there. Design elements go in there, a lot of scale goes in there. But when a customer RFE comes, it usually hits the apps team, what we call the apps team, what is customer facing. So platforms are going to have to monetize. And then the challenge is you're going to put very smart people in the platform team. How do you explain that when you're making the investment? Usually the way that we do it is you have to make sure that you call out the common elements that are required to deliver things to a large swath of customers. For example, in our case, we will say we have the top 300 customers. They are the largest enterprises in the world. And they require scale. They require a certain kind of cloud, multi-tenancy. They require a certain kind of privacy. They require data elements that need to be unique to that class of customers, especially nowadays with Gen AI, where data has to be kept private, but foundation models are public. So how do you create new models? Where do you put that stuff? Do you put that in the platform? Do you put that in the apps? So you have to start making the case. The common elements of this have to go into the platform for efficiency, speed, and expertise reasons. because you can't get expertise in different areas.
Exactly.
So long answer, but I think you have to think about it as much as possible because it gets you long-term efficiencies.
Yeah, yeah. I have the luxury of working with Barbara on a more intimate basis given my involvement in InfluxData. So I know a little bit about the answers maybe from an InfluxData point of view, but like organizationally, Barbara, how do you think about this? Is these forward deployed engineers in the actual development organization? Is it a centralized team? Organizationally, how do you maybe set it up? And subsequently, how do you drive maybe evangelism?
Yeah, it's a great question because there isn't really a one-size-fits-all. This is the thing we, as engineering leaders, go through all the time of, do you have horizontal teams? So do you have a team that are kind of lined up by skill set, or do you have vertical teams that are in a particular feature area? And so the platform team, their customer is the other engineering teams. And as you've got a lot of feature development teams, then you get a lot of tension between, okay, we're all waiting for the platform team because they're building some core element for us. So we've actually kind of gone back and forth a little bit, that where we're really driving commonality, we have it in a centralized platform team. So say our CI/CD pipeline, that is developed by a platform team that are really driving for commonality and consistency across our overall product suite. But then we also have feature development teams that sometimes need some new platform capability. And so to make that efficient, we will sometimes kind of embed the platform developers in the feature team for the purpose of delivering this capability. So you get that kind of efficiency to develop the new capability, but it's being developed with the platform in mind. So it is a trade-off. There's no perfect answer. I've gone back and forth between both, and we end up doing a mix of both.
Shailesh, any contrarian point of view there, or
I do have a contrarian point of view.
Why even have a platform team in the first place?
So when I think of, because I've heard from this platform engineering team that who are your customers? And it's like, I think everyone who have ever invested in platform engineering team always struggles with it. Are developers your customers, or your software paying your customers? In my view, the platform engineering group customers are customers. They are not developers. Yes, they work with developers and enable the scale, but at the end of it, you have to think about the customers, the end customer. And at some level, I see that, and I see the point. I see the point because the direct output of a lot of platform engineering teams directly goes to the developers. They're building common services. They're building CI/CD pipelines. But if you don't think of the end goal in mind, two things happen. One, it gets harder to justify the investment because at the end of it, the board, your investors, your shareholders, they're all looking at the customers, not the developers. They're looking at efficiency, but at the end of it, it's the customers they're looking at. Second, it's that you lose that sight that you start building these amazing platforms and extremely scalable platforms and highly efficient tools, which really doesn't matter because at the end of it, they're not in the service of the customer. So I think the platform engineering team should always have the end customer in mind. That's my contrarian view on it. But I've seen both work. You got to depend on the people you have.
Prince, anything to comment? Or Barbara, you want to defend yourself?
Rebut?
Rebut, yeah.
I almost think that it's not even contrarian. I think that I feel as heads of engineering, I think one thing that we must all learn, and if you haven't learned it yet, I think you probably will eventually because you have to. And this is true, especially now when times are getting tight. Economy is somewhat figuring out whether it is in recession or not. You must justify where you invest. It is very easy to have long-term goals and say, I need 5 engineers here and 10 there and 8 more there because it is the right thing to do. It is always the right thing to do. But the resources, right? People, money, program dollars, cloud dollars, whatever it is, resources are constrained and they should be constrained. When they are not constrained, you get bad decisions. You must constrain your resources, even if it is artificial. Even if there's a huge amount of funding, and we have all done that in the past, you must not use that money as if it is all yours and you can spend it. Because then you can make very good decisions about platforms and whatever else it may be, and you go to say, why should I be spending money on this platform, this scale, if I don't need it 8 years from now, till 8 years from now? Maybe there is a reasonable path where it is maybe not the most elegant, but it is okay. I don't know what, in 8 years, the economy will go up and down twice. You can't invest too much. So I kind of agree that you have to have developers are a certain audience as well because their productivity is important. But why are you investing in that? There has to be a reason behind that as well.
Barbara, did we change your mind?
No, of course not. It's certainly, there are values to both. The platform teams certainly need to be aware of why they're building what they're building. And you can't have that they're off inventing a platform that none of the feature teams are ever going to use. So it is a very cooperative venture. So they're not independent. They don't just say, oh, I think a customer would like this thing that none of the feature teams are looking for. So they're kind of their direct audience, their direct customer is the other development teams, but they're obviously guided by the broader needs of the overall company.
Any sort of insights on when it starts making sense to invest in a more structured approach with a platform engineering team? We saw by raise of hands here, not too many of the organization in the audience maybe have a structured, formalized sort of setup for that yet. But is there a sort of like a number of developers? Is it a complexity or?
Yeah, I think a piece of it is when you start seeing the same problem being solved in multiple groups. So, when you're tiny, you're all just one team. But when you start seeing kind of, wow, that team are solving that problem, and that team are solving a remarkably similar problem, and worse, in a different way, then you start seeing, okay, how do I get commonality? How do I get to where problems are being solved in a particular way? I also think the technology, the cognitive overload of dealing with all of the technology. It's like we deliver our software into 3 cloud providers. And so you can't have that each feature team is independently figuring out all the nuances of how Kubernetes behaves differently in all the 3 providers. So you have to go to where there's one team that really does understand that and abstract it away for the others. So it's kind of, as the complexity grows and you start seeing the same problem being solved multiple times, that's when you know you need a team to work on it.
Yeah. Shailesh, do you hire specifically for this, or is there somebody that raises their hand and says, hey, I'll take on this?
Actually, a combination. So in fact, the first point, I think the way we have, or I have invested in platform engineering teams is primarily at an inflection point. So if you have, like, let's say 2 or 3 teams, it may not matter because they are able to do a lot of things. But the moment you get investors putting money, or you do there's an event where you're trying to tip the scale from a linear curve growth to an exponential curve growth, that's where you need the platform teams, because the platform teams, you're going to unlock every team to go exponential. And that's where you invest. Many a times, most of my times actually, the platform, like I take some of the most tenured developers and maybe entice them or excite them, use whatever words you have to, but to come to the platform teams, and also get people from outside. Because one of the biggest dangers I have seen is that anytime I have done that and I have failed, is that you get people from outside to build your platform engineering teams, they don't have the context of what needs to be built. So the best things I've seen is get your most tenured developers and get them to build the platform. They will build the best platform because they understand the systems very well. They understand the common things that need to be built across the system. It does take a hit from an application productivity perspective, because suddenly you're taking one of your most tenured developers, who is probably the fastest, and taking them off building customer-facing features and putting them on platform. So there is that depth which you'll have to justify, and I think that is where you unlock the exponential growth.
Can we talk a little bit about buy-in? So like, what does it take to evangelize this for the developers, but maybe also subsequently more broadly in the organization, right? These are resources that aren't necessarily building features and functions or burning down a backlog of bugs, but how do you get the executive buy-in and developer buy-in? Prince, maybe.
So, there is always, there are 2 classic ways. There is the carrot and the stick, right? The stick first. The stick is fear. So usually, one way that I will strike fear is that you want to scale to 20,000 concurrent users from 200. You got to have a platform approach. You cannot just iteratively build it at the very top. You have to change things fundamentally, and you have to plan it. And it's a 18-month cycle or 2-year cycle, and that can only be done in a platform way of working, right? You need to have strong systems people who think long term, who are able to phase it out. And it's not a waterfall that you will get something in 2 years. You have to be able to deliver something every quarter or every month. So that's the fear thing, right? So if you don't do it, you won't get this. The stick is that if you're able to do that well, you unlock many other benefits that will come along with that, right? And today, you're forced to scale because your customers are saying it. Tomorrow, you'll be forced to do something else that will go into the platform. So use this opportunity and build the team correctly. Right, put the right people in there, and then you'll get the benefits of it longer term. So I find that combination works well.
Mm-hmm. Barbara, any comment on executive buy-in?
Yeah, I would to a certain extent, I would push back a little on who needs to be in the decision-making about is it a platform team or is it not a platform team. To a certain extent, you have an engineering team, and the engineering team needs to deliver product. And I would hate my boss, Evan Kaplan, to be micromanaging on whether I have 3 UI developers or I have 4 platform developers. So it's almost like just organize engineering in the way that makes most sense for you, get to as much commonality of functionality, and then you're going to be held accountable by what engineering delivers. To continue from the earlier comments, it's not useful if you have a platform if the platform isn't actually driving the needs of the organization. So I wouldn't kind of do a platform with a big P to outside of engineering. It's part of engineering. It's how we deliver. Selling to developers, I think I've found developers love it, that they love this idea of there being a consistent set of services that they can rely on, rather than they have to kind of go invent right down to the bare metal.
Mm-hmm. How do you
I think it's easier to do that buy-in if you have someone like Ivan. I mean, I know him very well. So it's just that he's a technologist. I think when you have a board or you have investors who are not strong technologists, you got to do a little bit of what Prince said.
Can I add one more thing to Barbara? I find most board members, very, very large majority, almost like 99.9% of board members and investors have no clue about engineering. They have zero idea. So,
present company except.
That is why I was 99.9. I didn't say 100. So what happens is, so therefore Barbara is exactly right. I mean, you almost don't need to justify it, because even if you tried, they won't get it, right? So they say, I just don't know what you do, but you do a very good job of it. Continue doing it. Just don't fail.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the outcome-driven engineering organization.
Yes. So how do you justify it to yourself, though?
And that is, I think, that's the earlier discussion, right?
Yeah.
Because you do need to look, especially things like, as I said, whether it's scale, whether it's efficiency, shared services. If you don't put them in a shared way, you will start breaking things, because people will make different decisions about how to do architecture. Then it's an old API model also, right? You have to have consistent APIs at each layer. So that, I think, internally, if you're in enough meetings with architects and you're watching and listening, the self-evolution occurs, I would say.
Yeah. Are there specific KPIs or metrics you guys are tracking? System reliability, productivity, other sort of things, and how might that have changed, maybe kind of given the current backdrop of trying to do more with less?
I can start, because I'm sure that's a common question across everyone. We are big fans of telemetry, right, and self-reporting. I think that has changed over the last many years. It wasn't that popular earlier. It has, but it's, to me, every module should self-report. It's not just about customer data, but about its own behavior and so on. So one is just at the module level, you want to do that. But overall, the platform level, there is one class of data which is troubleshooting data, right? What's going on in the environment? Why does it matter? And the other is much more about the data that the platform sees. Right? So it's not about itself, it's about the data that passes through it, which is very useful for understanding trends, behaviors, making product decisions as well. So to me, I don't even think in terms of KPIs. I say that any data that it sees that may be useful, you figure out a smart, efficient way to log it somewhere. And then KPIs will figure out.
Yeah.
And your usual KPIs, uptime and so on, always there.
I mean, we have a lot of telemetry data specifically around uptime, each service availability, performance, how many customers, load, your peak and medians. Fundamental service, I would say, as service level metrics. Platform does build a lot of services which are common across. So we also ask platform teams to justify usage. That if you're building a service, no one is using it, or is mildly used, you got to justify that investment. Why are you making that investment? So that's something that we encourage our platform teams to do. So our platform teams do some sort of evangelization, because they know that they have to show those KPIs of their usage. The third thing is that they also unlock a lot of engineering efficiency. And I mean, we use LinearB, but there are other tools out there which measure engineering efficiency. And I think earlier in the keynote, David was talking about, there's no single metrics for measuring engineering efficiency. Like, I'm sure every engineering leader here measures engineering efficiency very differently across many metrics. So that's something that we do it. It's a very sticky one, because everyone defines it very differently, and also has every engineer in my organization and every organization I have been in has opinions about engineering efficiency and how to measure it. But that is something that we do enable and we do measure.
Awesome. This has been a little bit of a lightning talk, I think, or a panel in that matter. I hope we were able to shed a little bit of light on platform engineering and how that can help you guys do more faster and more consistently, and hopefully with a higher satisfaction score among the actual application developers in your organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope we get more hands next time we do platform.